4 meters. That's about 13 feet, the length of a normal hallway in a normal American house. If you are 65 years old, the number of seconds it takes you to walk those 4 meters at your usual pace tells researchers more about your metabolic future and your kidney future than almost any single question your doctor will ask you at your next annual physical. Not your weight, not your cholesterol panel, your stride. Back in 2001, a landmark study in the Journals of Gerontology followed 5,317 older adults and used slow walking speed as one of the defining markers of frailty, and what it found was blunt. The people who crossed that threshold carried a sharply higher risk of falls, disability, hospitalization, and death. Slow walking was not a side effect of getting old. It was a warning shot. And here is what should bother you. Nobody times your walk. There is no billing code for watching you cross a hallway. Your appointment is 15 minutes. Your blood is drawn, your pressure is cuffed, and the single cheapest, most predictive measurement in geriatric medicine never happens. In the next 25 minutes, I am going to give you the exact hallway test you can do this week with a phone stopwatch, the specific speed number that separates a protective stride from a warning stride, the reason your leg muscles are quietly running a chemical conversation with your pancreas and your fat tissue, the kidney connection that shows up in your legs before it shows up on your standard lab work, and the one response to slowing down that turns a fixable problem into a permanent one. And there is one blood test in this story, a kidney test, that most annual physicals never include, even though the research tying it to physical decline in older adults was published in a major medical journal in 2022. Most people have never heard its name. I will give you that name and exactly what to say to your doctor before this video is over. Here is exactly what you are getting today in order. First, the 4-meter walking test itself, the setup, the stopwatch, and the 2 speed numbers that matter, one that should reassure you and one that should send you to your physician's office with questions. Second, the mechanism. Why muscle tissue after 60 behaves like a gland, releasing signaling compounds that talk directly to your fat stores and your blood sugar control, which is why a slowing walk so often shows up years before a diabetes diagnosis. Third, the kidney link, including the name of the blood test from that 2022 research that catches kidney-driven decline earlier than the standard test most of you have been getting for decades. Fourth, the exercise finding. A randomized trial in older adults compared aerobic training, resistance training, and the 2 combined, and one of those 3 approaches came out ahead. I will tell you which and what a separate 3-year kidney disease trial adds to the picture. And fifth, the single most damaging mistake older adults make in the first 6 months after they notice they have slowed down. It feels like common sense. It is the opposite. That mistake is the reason a slow score becomes a downward spiral, and I want it fixed in your household by the end of this video. I run this channel, Dr. Vitalis, for one reason. The research on aging is enormous. It is public, and almost none of it survives the trip into a 15-minute appointment. So at this desk, we read the studies themselves, the journals, the trials, the cohorts, and translate them into things you can actually check, measure, and change at home. That is the whole job. Today, the subject is your stride, and the evidence behind it is some of the strongest in all of aging research. Let me tell you about Frank. Frank is 68, retired machinist, 31 years at the same plant outside Toledo, Ohio. lives in a ranch house with his wife Carol, single story, which he considered a retirement victory because there were no stairs left to worry about. Frank's last physical at 66 came back what his doctor called clean. Blood pressure controlled on one medication, fasting glucose at the high end of normal, standard kidney number, unremarkable. Frank walked out of that appointment feeling bulletproof. What nobody measured, because nobody measures it, was that Frank had slowed down. 2 years earlier, he walked the dog a full loop around the block, about 12 minutes. Now the same loop took closer to 17, and the dog spent half of it waiting. Getting up from the recliner had become a two-hand push instead of a stand. Grocery trips ended with Frank leaning on the cart. Carol noticed. Frank waved it off with the 4 most expensive words in aging. "I'm just getting older." 18 months after that clean physical, Frank's fasting glucose crossed into pre-diabetes. 6 months after that, his kidney filtration number, the one calculated from a standard blood test, had dropped enough that his doctor said the words chronic kidney disease stage 3 for the first time. Frank was stunned. Carol was angry. How does a man go from a clean physical to 2 chronic diagnoses in 2 years? And here is the part that matters for you. Frank's body had been announcing this the entire time. His walking speed had fallen from roughly 1.2 meters per second to under 0.8. In the research, that is not a detail. That drop is one of the loudest alarms an aging body can sound. A longitudinal study of community-dwelling older adults in rural Korea, the aging study of Pyeongchang rural area, found that usual gait speed tracked directly with frailty status, with the likelihood of ending up institutionalized, and with mortality itself. Frank's legs knew about his pancreas and his kidneys before his lab work did. Now, Frank is a composite, a pattern assembled from the cases that fill this literature precisely because there is nothing unusual about him. The sequence he lived, the quiet slowing, the reassuring labs, the double diagnosis is the standard sequence. And if you are past 60 and you have caught yourself taking the shorter loop, avoiding the far parking spot, or pushing off the armrest with both hands, this video is not about Frank. It is about you. So why would walking speed predict blood sugar problems and kidney problems? What does your stride have to do with your pancreas? Here is the mechanism in plain language, and I want you to be able to repeat it to someone at dinner. Your muscle is not just an engine. It is a gland. When muscle contracts, it releases signaling molecules. Researchers call them myokines that travel through your bloodstream and communicate with other tissues. A 2018 review in Cold Spring Harbor Perspectives in Medicine described this muscle-to-fat crosstalk in detail. Contracting muscle sends chemical messages to your adipose tissue, your fat stores, and those messages help protect the body against obesity and type 2 diabetes. Working muscle is also your single largest destination for blood sugar. When you walk, your legs pull glucose out of circulation and burn it. Now, run that in reverse. Sarcopenia, the gradual age-related loss of muscle mass and muscle function, was laid out clearly in a 2019 review in Joint, Bone, Spine. It is driven by aging itself, by physical inactivity, by loss of mobility, and by malnutrition. As muscle shrinks, 3 things happen at once. The glucose disposal site gets smaller, so blood sugar runs higher. The myokine signal fades, so the protective conversation with your fat tissue goes quiet. And the walk slows, because there is simply less functional muscle to power it. That is why walking speed works as a window. It is not that slow walking causes diabetes. It is that the slowing walk and the drifting blood sugar are two readouts of the same underlying event: the erosion of muscle as a metabolic organ. There is a second layer, and it is inflammation. A paper in the Journal of Applied Physiology made the case that exercise itself is anti-inflammatory, and that this is a key reason active people are protected against type 2 diabetes and cardiovascular disease, both of which ride on chronic, low-grade inflammation. Sit still, and that protective effect disappears, while the inflammatory background hum gets louder. And that same hum is hard on the small blood vessels of the kidney. This is not an isolated organ story. Researchers writing on cardiorenal multimorbidity in the Journal of Clinical Medicine described how patients with combined heart and kidney disease show reduced exercise tolerance, reduced physical activity, and degraded skeletal muscle function, and how that combination feeds frailty and worsens both the kidney trajectory and the cardiovascular one. Heart, kidney, and muscle decline together, each dragging on the others. The walk is where all three show up first, because walking demands all three at once. And it goes even deeper than organs. In 2020, researchers publishing in the journal eLife described a blood test built from DNA methylation patterns that measures the pace of biological aging, and they built it by tracking decline across 18 separate organ systems. Read that again. Aging is not one organ failing. It is a body-wide pace, and your usual walking speed is one of the few free, visible expressions of that pace. Which brings us back to Frank. His 17-minute dog loop was not a leg problem. It was his metabolic machinery, his vascular system, and his kidneys all downshifting together, displayed in the only place he could have seen it without a needle. He saw it. He just called it getting older. Now let me show you the range of what this looks like, because Frank is only one face of it. Dolores is 74. Retired school teacher in Tucson, Arizona, widowed 6 years. Dolores walks every morning at 6:15, before the heat, 2 miles with a neighbor, and she walks it briskly, right around 1.3 meters per second, when her daughter timed her for fun with a phone app. Dolores is the case the frailty research describes from the protective side. In that Korean longitudinal cohort I mentioned, the older adults at the faster end of the gait speed distribution were the ones least likely to become frail, least likely to be institutionalized, least likely to die during follow-up. Dolores is not lucky. Dolores is maintaining the machine. Her muscle mass is holding. Her glucose has somewhere to go every single morning, and the anti-inflammatory effect of all that contraction is working on her side. When Dolores has a bad year, and eventually everyone does, she will fall from a height. She has reserve. That is what a fast walk actually is: stored resilience. Raymond is 66. Former long-haul dispatcher in Memphis, Tennessee, type 2 diabetic for 9 years, and he will tell you the diagnosis changed his medications, but not his habits. Chair, desk, car, couch. Raymond's usual pace, when his son finally timed it across the church parking lot, was 0.7 meters per second. Here is why Raymond matters. A 2023 experimental study in the European Journal of Translational Myology followed 90 type 2 diabetics and found exactly the two-sided coin you would predict. A sedentary lifestyle drove obesity and diabetes risk upward, while exercise produced measurable positive effects on metabolic parameters within 3 months and further gains at 6. 3 months. Raymond is not waiting on a miracle drug. The intervention with evidence behind it for his exact situation is the thing his slow walk is telling him he has stopped doing. His stride is both the symptom and the prescription. And then there is Eleanor, 72, Scranton, Pennsylvania, and Eleanor is where this road ends if nothing interrupts it. Eleanor is on dialysis 3 mornings a week. A 2024 review in Kidney International laid out how common frailty is among dialysis patients, slow walking speed prominent among its features, and how that frailty predicts hospitalization, cardiovascular events, and death in that population. Here is what I need you to understand about Eleanor. The slowing did not start when the dialysis started. Years earlier, Eleanor was frank. Reassuring standard labs, a shrinking walking range, a family that noticed, and a patient who waved it off. The window where the walk was the earliest signal, the window you are standing in right now, if any of this sounds familiar, closed quietly. Dolores, Raymond, Eleanor. Same biology, 3 different points on the timeline. The entire purpose of the next section is to keep you at the Dolores end of it. Here is exactly what to do in this order starting this week. Step 1. Time your walk. You need a hallway, a driveway, or a grocery aisle where you can mark out 4 meters, about 13 feet, with a couple of extra feet on each end so you are timing your cruising speed, not your startup. Walk it at your normal, everyday pace, not a test day performance, while someone runs a phone stopwatch from the moment your foot crosses the first mark to the moment it crosses the second. Do it 3 times and average. Now the 2 numbers. 4 meters in about 4 seconds is 1 meter per second, and at 65, that is a solid, protective, usual pace. 4 meters in 5 seconds or more puts you at or below 0.8 meters per second, and that is the zone the frailty literature keeps flagging. A 2021 review in the Journal of Frailty and Aging lists gait speed among the core physical performance tests clinicians use to assess function in older adults. So understand what you are doing in that hallway. You are administering a legitimate clinical instrument for free that your physical costs hundreds of dollars to skip. Write the number down with the date. That baseline is the most valuable health record you will create this year. Step 2. If your number is slow, or if it has dropped since a previous timing, bring it to your physician and say these words. My usual gait speed is below 0.8 meters per second, and I would like to talk about my metabolic and kidney risk. That sentence changes the appointment. And while you are there, ask one more question, and here is the payoff on the loop I opened at the top. Ask whether a cystatin C-based kidney measure is appropriate for you. The standard kidney number most of you get is calculated from creatinine, and creatinine is a waste product of muscle. If your muscle mass is shrinking, which is the entire problem we have been discussing, your creatinine can read reassuringly low while your kidney function quietly declines. Cystatin C does not depend on muscle mass the same way. In 2022, a prospective cohort study in JAMA Network Open found that cystatin C-based kidney function measures were associated with long-term frailty trajectories and physical function decline in older adults. That is the test that sees what Frank's clean physical missed. Whether it is right for you is your doctor's call, not mine, but you cannot discuss a test you have never heard of. And now, you have heard of it. Step 3. Build muscle and build wind together because the trial evidence says the combination wins. In 2022, a randomized trial in the Journals of Gerontology took older adults with obesity who were dieting and compared aerobic exercise alone, resistance exercise alone, and both combined, measuring effects on visceral fat, the fat around the organs, on the fat marbled into muscle, and on physical and metabolic function. The combined approach is the model I want in your head. Aerobic work, meaning walking itself, done deliberately and slightly faster than comfortable. Resistance work, meaning sit-to-stands from a kitchen chair, step-ups on the bottom stair, light dumbbells or resistance bands, twice a week. If you have existing kidney disease, do not assume you are excluded. A 3-year randomized lifestyle intervention published in the Journal of the American Society of Nephrology enrolled 160 patients with stage 3 and stage 4 chronic kidney disease and tested exactly this kind of program for improving fitness and exercise capacity. Trialists put stage 4 kidney patients through structured exercise. The idea that older or ill bodies should be handled like glass is not what the research community itself believes. Clear any new program with your own physician first, especially with heart or kidney conditions. Then start smaller than your pride wants. And show up more often than your excuses want. Step 4. Feed the muscle you are trying to keep. That joint bone spine review named malnutrition as one of the recognized drivers of sarcopenia, and in older adults the shortfall is very often protein. Appetite shrinks after 60, dinners get lighter, toast starts replacing meals, and the muscle you are exercising has no raw material to rebuild with. Anchor every plate to a protein source. Eggs, fish, chicken, beans, cottage cheese, Greek yogurt. If you are losing weight without trying or skipping meals regularly, say so at your next appointment in exactly those words, because unintentional weight loss in an older adult is never a footnote. Exercise without protein is a construction crew without lumber. Step 5. And this is the mistake I promised you, the one that turns a slow score into a spiral. When older adults notice they have slowed down, the instinctive response is to do less. Rest more. Take the car instead. Skip the stairs. Sit out the walk. It feels prudent. It is the single worst available move because inactivity and loss of mobility are themselves listed causes of sarcopenia. Rest dissolves muscle. Dissolved muscle slows the walk further. The slower walk invites more rest. That loop, run for 2 or 3 years, is the road from Frank to Eleanor. So make the opposite covenant in your house tonight. Slowing down is the signal to engage, not retreat. Retest your 4-meter time every 6 months. Same hallway, same shoes. Write it next to the last one, and treat any drop of more than 1/10 of a meter per second as an agenda item for your next appointment. Not a fact of life. Before I close, one more piece from the research frontier, because you deserve to know where this field is headed, and because it dismantles the last excuse, the belief that decline after 65 is a one-way street. In 2021, a pilot clinical trial published in Clinical and Translational Medicine gave older adults a supplement combination of glycine and acetylcysteine, which the researchers call GlyNAC, aimed at restoring glutathione, one of the body's core cellular defense molecules. The results in that pilot covered a startling span. Improvements in oxidative stress, in mitochondrial dysfunction, in inflammation, in insulin resistance, and, notably for today's subject, in muscle strength and cognition. Now, hear the caveats as loudly as the finding. This was a pilot trial. Small, early, not a treatment guideline, and absolutely not me telling you to buy anything. If it interests you, that is a conversation for your physician. By name, Glynac. The reason I bring it up is not the supplement. It is the principle. Researchers gave older adults an intervention and watched insulin resistance and muscle strength improve. The machinery we have talked about for 20 minutes is not fixed in stone. It responds. At 65, at 70, at 80, it responds. So let me leave you where we started, in that hallway. 4 meters. 4 seconds or less, and you are carrying reserve into the next decade. 5 seconds or more, and your body has just handed you the earliest, cheapest warning it knows how to give years before the lab work catches up. Exactly the way it tried to warn Frank. What you now know that Frank did not is that the walk, the muscle, the blood sugar, and the kidneys are one connected system. That a slowing stride is a request for action rather than a sentence, and that the response, with trial evidence behind it, costs a pair of shoes, a kitchen chair, some protein, and one pointed question about cystatin C at your next appointment. Everything in this video is education, not medical advice, and the people in it are composites of patterns from the published research. Your numbers, your conditions, and your exercise clearance belong in a conversation with your own physician. But the stopwatch part, that belongs to you. And it should happen this week. If someone you love has started taking the shorter loop, pushing off the armrests with both hands, or waiting at the end of the driveway while the dog pulls, send them this video, and then offer to time their 4 meters yourself, because the people slowing down are almost never the ones who notice. If today earned it, the like button genuinely helps this reach the next household that needs it. And if you want more research translated into things you can actually measure at your kitchen table, subscribe to Dr. Vitalis. I will see you at the next